All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate you guys showing up today. Um, and we wanted to start doing some market highlights because we know that that's been a lot of people's questions lately is how are individual markets doing? We see national news that kind of covers what's happening in the, the national markets, but really drilling down into markets that we operate in. And as a lot of you know, before we go into a market, we really drill deep to make sure that the demographics of the market are um, really strong because we know that recessions happen. I've been doing this since '99 when I started my own companies, and before that, I worked with my father as a he's a first generation builder and developer. And I've seen a lot of cycles. And what's really important is that you understand that you have the market fundamentals, and then you have the deal itself's fundamentals. And it's important to make sure that both are in alignment, that you don't just have a really good buy on a deal and a lukewarm market, and vice versa. You're not buying a lukewarm deal in a bad market. You want to make sure that everything's in alignment. And so, we've got a lot of things happening in Boise, and I hear people ask me all the time, why Boise? And my first response is, you haven't been here. For those of us that have lived here for quite some time, I've been here since 1980, and apologize for my camera spazzing out on us. But there's been a lot of reasons why someone would live and love to live in Idaho. And it has to do with just the feel, right? I mean, the place is clean. We've got a great downtown. We've got a lot of things that are going on. And we also have a lot of reasons to attract national employers and have a lot of the things that a lot of the bigger markets maybe don't or do have because we are the capital city. And so we're getting some of the benefit from that. And what we see in our markets all the time is that people want to move to Idaho, but they look at it and they go, well, I can't afford to because the cost of living, what I'm going to get paid, it's just not affordable because of what the job growth is. But we've seen a lot of people, especially after COVID, that are coming in with a lot of out-of-town jobs. We've seen a lot of national employers come to town, spend a lot of money in town. And we're going to go through all that today. But, one of the things that we've seen is growth. We've seen a lot of things happen in the last 5 years, as this chart shows, where we've seen a substantial growth in other users, which include retail and multifamily, have stayed fairly strong, but we've seen industrial growth go off the charts. And a lot of that has to do with things that really excite me because that shows job growth. And when you see people coming to town wanting warehouse space, wanting industrial space, that means that we're going to have ancillary jobs, the convenience store guy, the Amazon delivery guy, a lawyer, a doctor, all of those kinds of things are necessary because of what we're seeing there. But if we look at where we're at just demographically, as far as what we have for product, we've got about 3% of our space in the Boise metro area is a data center. 41% of the space calculations are office, 44% in manufacturing, and 10% in distribution. And so when we look at the manufacturing, these are people, these are jobs, these are the kind of things that really make a market grow and continue to see an increase of wages, an increase of livability, and things like that. Some of the things that we're seeing, black market gelato and sorbet. I don't know if it costs a kidney to get a quart, but you're seeing that they're building a 90,000 square foot facility right near Boise. They're investing $4 million capital in that, and they're going to provide 30 jobs in the next 3 years. that's a decent sized facility, but we're seeing those move in from out of state and pick Boise. A lot of you know about Micron. They do chips in cell phones. And so they're expanding their facility by $15 billion and creating 2,000 direct jobs. But then there's the ancillary jobs. I know people that supply parts and pieces for their processes. You've got you'll have over 2,000 jobs created during the construction process. And all of that bodes very well for the Boise metro area and Idaho as a whole. We've got a Meta data center that's an $800 million data center that's 960,000 square feet. That's in Kuna, which is about 7 miles south of the Boise. What is it? That's the south boundary of Boise. And so again, they're going to create over 1,200 jobs during construction, and they're going to have full-time employment of about 100 people upon opening. So, and they're shooting that for 2024, I believe was the last date that I'd heard. So the other one we've got Stowe Companies. They're building $143 million manufacturing facility that's going to bring 236 new jobs. And just as a national average, and we're going to throw some of this stuff out there, and I can give you resources if you'd like it, but for every job that's created in a market, there's 2.3 ancillary jobs. I don't know who the 0.3 person is, but the ancillary jobs are all of the ones that come with it, whether it's chiropractors or cooks or, lawn care people or whatever. Those are the kind of jobs. So just with these 4 large projects, we're talking about, a couple thousand notable jobs that are going to be brought into the area in the next couple of years that will then bring in another 5,000 or 7,000 jobs just to support those people. And a lot of people look at that and they go, well, 7,000 jobs, that's 10,000 total. That's not a whole lot. But as you'll find, Boise's not that large. The Boise metro area is not that large, but Caldwell they had a great mayor over the last 12 years. They've got a new mayor now, and I really believe in what Jerome Mapp's vision is as well. But the previous mayor, Garrett, he spent a lot of time and effort really revitalizing the downtown core, really working hard, and they brought on over nearly 1 million square feet of new industrial space. And you've kind of seen that whole thing hopscotch over Nampa. And in that, you've watched Nampa kind of struggle. They're kind of boxed in on several sides. But Caldwell has gone from a drive till you qualify neighborhood where, the farther out you go, the cheaper it gets. And people that are right on the edge are picking up a house out there and then commuting to Boise. It's changed to a market that is now a market for its own sake. And when you see that, you start to see these cities are starting to take on a synergy all of their own, and they're making their own imprint, and they're making their own way, so that you can now see that, hey, Caldwell is now a viable market, that people are choosing to live in Caldwell because they want to live in Caldwell, because their jobs are in Caldwell. And now you're starting to see, in my opinion, a lot of things change about the dynamic inside the city. And now you're going to see shopping, and you're going to see retail centers, and you're going to see lifestyle malls come to the Caldwell area because of the way that they are growing. And for somebody that's been here, 42 years, I've watched that everybody always came to Boise for everything. And from Caldwell, that's about 22 miles. And you're commuting, and the traffic's getting bad. And so now you're starting to see, as those cities grow and as they get bigger and they become a place of their own, that you're starting to see people want to live in certain areas for other reasons other than price point. And you're starting to see the demographic inside that area change. You're getting high-end homes built out in the Caldwell area. You're getting mid-level managers who, are making $150,000 a year living in that area because of the industrial space and the manufacturing facilities that are coming on board. And so when I start to see this kind of stuff, it really tells me that it has kind of hit its own stride, and it's becoming a force in our area that has job growth. It has and it's creating all the things that are necessary to bring in additional industry, kind of a flywheel effect that once it begins to get going, it really takes off and it really starts to grow on its own. So I'm really kind of excited about some of the things that are happening out in Caldwell. They put in a lot of effort to do that. And in doing that, they are creating a really great working class environment. So we're also seeing a lot of riverfront development for higher end product, which is, Middleton, for those of you that don't know, is about an 8-mile, 7-mile commute. Actually, it's less than that. It's about a 5-mile commute to Caldwell. And so you're starting to see Caldwell grow backwards into other communities instead of the gaps that we used to see in the farmland where you drive and there was Meridian and then there was a gap, then there was Nampa, then there was a gap, and then there was Caldwell. You're starting to see that backfill. And the thing that is exciting to me about this riverfront development is it's now high-end homes that are going to bring in retailers and restaurants and things like that that will create the community environment that these small towns will evolve into, that will be exciting to see. So we've also got a very changing demographic. Obviously, as I get older, I'm part of that changing demographic, but we've got an MSA that's only 811,000 people in the Boise, Nampa, Meridian, Kuna, Eagle, Garden City, Caldwell, and Middleton core. But that puts us on par with other areas like Colorado Springs, like Charleston, South Carolina, Madison, Wisconsin, and even close by, only 6 hours by car away, is Reno, Nevada. But here's the thing that's exciting to me is that we've got over 1 million people projected to live in the area in the next 10 years. Actually, that is phenomenal growth. That's a 5% growth I'll do the math, but it's 200,000 people that are going to be added into the area in the next 5 years, which all of those people are going to be needing employment. They're going to be needing housing. They're going to be needing places to shop, places to eat. And when you look at where the area is growing, and you start looking at the national picture where people are saying, oh, we're headed for a recession, we're headed for a downturn in the market, we're headed for these kinds of things. I often wonder how much of that will affect the Boise area, and why will it affect the Boise area? If we're continuing and we're projected to grow, why is it that the nation can go through a downturn in a market, but we can still grow? And I come back to this beautiful picture that my staff put in here of what we have as a city. We're 45 minutes to ski resorts and lakes, and we've got options for hiking, and we've got civic centers with the Albertsons Foundation and the Morrison Knudsen Foundation being here. And we've just got a lot of opportunities here that give people reasons to live here. The other thing that we've seen is we've seen a 5.3% growth rate in the last 10 years. Star has grown by 191%. I remember when my parents moved out there my last year of high school, there was nothing out there. There was one option to eat, one grocery store, and one bar, and 3 churches. Now it's grown quite a bit, but we've seen a 24% growth rate over the last 10 years, and that's projected to move forward at about the same rate. And so when we see all of that growth, I know for a fact that when you build a house, you employ a lot of people, but the number is actually quite a bit larger than those that are involved in the direct construction, because you get, you have, there's about 700 jobs that are created with each house that's built. The guy that's making the PVC pipe, the guy that makes the carpet, the cabinet maker that's in Texas or wherever they are assembling the cabinets. And so there's a lot of growth that's going to happen. And we're still seeing strong economic growth in the nation, but we're going to bring that here, and we're going to do the assembly here. We're going to move the people in. And so we're seeing a lot of that. When people look at this graph and they say, hey, you guys have got 67% of your people moving in from California, A lot of people get upset and they get irritated about that, probably for political reasons. While I can understand that, the thing that I really like about the California market is if we're attracting that many Californians, we're attracting a lot of their high-level jobs, we're attracting their lifestyle, as far as what they're used to having for eating options, for national chains, for retailers, and all those kinds of things. But we're also seeing appreciation in real estate because they're coming out of a much more inflationary environment than we are. A house here is maybe 60% of what a house would cost in parts of Southern California. Even in the Bay Area, it's half the price. And people are coming here because they can not only enjoy the lifestyle, but they can have things here that they can't have there. And when you really look at that, they're bringing in money, and money is what makes economies go round. And so when I look at what this means to me and how this happens, I see that there's a lot of good things going on. We've got Oregon for 8%, Nevada is coming in at 4%, Arizona is 1%, and 5% from elsewhere. But really, when you look at who Californians are, what they're used to for a living wage, I remember they didn't like us when we moved here from California in 1980. So nothing's really changed in that regard. But the thing that I'm seeing is that what people struggled to be able to do in 2002, 2008, 2012 was they struggled to adjust from their California cost and lifestyle to the Boise cost and lifestyle. And while Boise has definitely gotten a lot more expensive over the last decade, it's still very inexpensive compared to other markets in the nation, and California having a majority of those markets. So just this slide alone, based on Q4 of 22 data sets, it tells us that we're still very attractive price point wise. And I used to have this funny phrase that I would throw around in 2010, 2011. Those of you that know me know I like my little phrases. But Boise is a beautiful place to go broke. And if you're headed into a recessionary environment, if you're headed into something that's going to stop economies, and people are looking at that going, my quality of life is terrible. My expenses are through the roof. We've got $6 gas in California and $3 gas here. My cost of living is expensive. Everything about California is expensive. I can take a less expensive job in Idaho, or because of COVID, there's a lot of telecommuting. A lot of people are working from home. I know there's a lot of people out there that hope to work from home in the future and make that their full-time lifestyle so they can really live wherever they want and do the things that they want to do. And Boise provides that opportunity. So as long as there's the price differential that we're seeing between here and California, we're really going to continue to see an in-migration of people who are positioned to take full advantage of the difference and bring additional capital to start businesses, to build out that dream that they wanted of always owning their own company or expanding or doing some of those things. And so when I see this slide, I understand the political ramifications, and I understand that little old Boise is changing because of who's moving in, but I also see the funds that are being available and the difference in how we're going to grow. And so that part is really exciting to me. If you look at further than that, we break it out. We've actually got people coming in from the East Coast. We've got about 18% of our people moving in internationally to the Boise area, and we see where people are definitely moving in. Here's another thing that I find very interesting. If I look back at, I'll scroll back here real quick to one of the earlier slides. We have a population of 811,000 people, and we've got 416,000 in the workforce. That means that we've got a lot of young families, we've got a lot of people under the age of 18, and we've got a lot of retirees, which is backed up by this slide here, where you can see that if you come in here and you grab the under 20, the 20 to 34, and really kind of top out at the 49-year-old, that's me. My kids are out of the house, and I no longer fit in that demographic of having a household, but it's a majority of our population. And when you look at that, you're going to have people who have young children that are going to stay in the area. They may go away to college, but they'll come back here. So there's a lot of things going on here that continue to ensure that that household growth continues to grow. If you look at 23% of the market being under 20 years old, chances are under 20 years old in this environment, they're still living at home. And so if we take the 800,000 people, we know that about 200,000 people of those are minors that are going to likely stay in the area and likely require housing of their own, which, especially for my industry, that's a really strong indicator as to the internal growth that we will produce ourselves without in-migration. And so when I, again, look at national markets and local markets, and I see, wow, this is a very young population that is going to continue to grow. Over almost 70%, over 70% of the population is under the age of 50. You're going to see a lot of that where households grow, kids move out, they find a spouse, they start their own families. And that's one of the things that everybody says about Boise. It was a great place to raise my kids. I was so happy to have them here in the environment that they grew up in. And a lot of people still value that. And so that's going to lead us to an internal growth rate that is going to be apparent for the next 10 to 15 years, regardless of what happens from external forces. And so I look at that and I go, this is a pretty good indicator of what we're going to be able to sustain here inside Boise. When you look at the Boise Metro itself, which is just inside the Boise area, which is about 350,000 people internally just in the Boise city limits, we are above average on youngsters, and we are about average on 20 to 34-year-olds right out of college, starting their careers. And then we are again above average in the later working years of middle management and things like that. And so, excuse me, I've got a horrible noise going on here. But then when we start to get into the retirees, we have less retirees that stay in the area. May have a lot to do with the climate, may have a lot to do with the price point where they can go into southern markets and purchase cheaper, purchase warmer. But that aging population, I'm not saying anything bad about aging population, but they tend to become expensive because they're not producing their consumers, and that's great. We love that. They're using the medical system more. And this doesn't break it down by demographic charts as far as who's what, as far as amount of income earned annually, but they tend to be, as they get older, you see a large population that is dependent on the welfare system and things like that, which can be taxing to a state. Boise or Idaho is one of 3 states in the nation that has a balanced budget and has maintained that for quite some time. And so when you look at that, you've got income coming in, you've got young kids growing up, you've got jobs happening, you've got growth happening. And then as the population ages, it moves out to go somewhere warmer, maybe somewhere with more benefits for them. And so when you just look at it from a economic level, which that's what this is not about anybody in particular, but when you just look at it from an economic level, you start to see that this is a really healthy looking growth pattern and a really healthy chart of who's here and what we can expect over the next 10 to 15 years. You combine that with the labor force in the area. You can see that in 20, we had about 380,000 workers in the market. And in the beginning of 22, we were up to about 405,000 workers in the market. That's a pretty substantial growth. Again, you're coming up 30,000 employees in a market of 400,000. That's almost a 10% job growth of people actually going into the workforce. And we still struggle with our employment rate. We are currently experiencing a 3.4% employment growth, and we are much stronger than the national average of 0.5. And so you're seeing here this chart. I mean, I love a chart that's doing this because we have seen tremendous job growth in our area. And that has really given me the feeling that, in the 90s, people would ask, well, what is job situation in Idaho? Well, we've got Micron, we've got Albertsons, and that's kind of it. Maybe there was Morrison Knudsen in the first part of the 90s, but they were kind of phased out and bought up by Raytheon. By the end of the 90s and early 2000, they were all but gone. And yet you're still continuing to create 3.4%, 7 times the national average of job growth that continues to bring in more and more people to our area. Here's the other thing that I find to be pretty good. If you look at it, all of our numbers are up. Construction, obviously, construction costs are up substantially, but we're continuing even into 2022 to see a 14% job growth in construction, 15% in professional and business services, 11% in leisure and hospitality, and public administration at 17%. And so as you see this kind of a trend continue to happen, you're starting to see that we're really leaning toward where we were a really rural and agricultural area. We're starting to see a lot more people in the professional services and the public administration and financial activities and things like that, to where we can look at it and go, wow, we are transitioning in the Boise MSA from a farm community, a ranching community, into a business center for the Pacific Northwest. And I really get excited about this. And I especially like the fact that we're seeing such phenomenal numbers of double digits in more categories than not in that growth of revenues to the employees. Because the reality is, at the end of the day, as housing prices continue to escalate, as land prices continue to escalate, the cost of chicken and the cost of fuel is always going to be on the rise, especially with what has happened lately. You've got to see the job growth. You've got to see the numbers that the employers are actually willing to pay that, because the minute they stop doing that and stop being able to meet the growth of the market and meet where the expenses are, you're going to start to see the bleed off that we're seeing in California to a huge extent. Over 500,000 people moved out of California at the last net migration numbers for 22. And to lose that many people that contribute in a state, there's really only a couple of reasons why. One is political alignment, obviously, and the other one is they just can't afford to live there anymore. So they're moving to be somewhere cheaper that they can't afford, and they can do that here in Boise very economically, and they're able to bring, obviously, a lot of their wage with them. Housing prices, I just touched on that a little bit. We've grown average median home price in Ada County, which is Boise, Eagle, Garden City, Meridian, and parts of Cuna, has gone up to $483,000 and over $500,000 in the new construction area. But the other thing that I see is, if you're talking about the average median income or average median price, that means that there are an equal number below and an equal number above of houses that are for sale. That's just the median price. If you throw them on a blender and do an average, you're coming out at that. And what we're also seeing is that the price point that houses are still very rapidly moving is that under $500,000 mark. I was talking with my son the other day. He was putting up a house for sale in Caldwell. He thought he had it priced really good. 14 showings day one and 5 offers by close of business day 2. That was 3 days before Memorial Weekend. So in that price point, what we offer the most of, there are a lot of buyers and sellers. There's a really strong demand. And again, at that price point, when you look at some of the median housing prices in San Bernardino County or Sonoma County, you're seeing that it's quite close to double that. And so we become affordable. And when you see interest rates continue to magnify this cost, because you go from a 3% interest rate on a $480,000 home, you're probably talking about a $2,500 mortgage on that. My buddy Paul Anderson, who's on the call, can probably speak to that a little bit better as far as what that is. But now you're starting to see rates climb to 7.5. That becomes a real problem, because now that payment doubled. And when you're still seeing those homes still sell, That to me is a strong indicator of real demand in our area. And as long as we can continue that strong demand, we're going to continue to see our MSA grow. So, and growth is what brings in all the goodies that we want, right? We're starting to see, a lot of, increased tax base. One of the things that happened in 2009, 10, and 11, all of our infrastructure projects that were planned based on tax revenues from 5, 6, and 7 and projections were halted. They were put on hold. And so Boise and the MSA here is in a lot of ways very behind on what the infrastructure is versus the need. And as we continue to see that job growth, I know that tax bills were up between 20 and 30% on residential properties in the Boise area this last year, which means that there's more money coming in. There's more civic projects that are going to be done. There's more infrastructure that's going to be done. There's more improvement that's going to continue to happen that is going to make sure that we become a more drivable city, a more walkable city, a more enjoyable city. And a lot of that got stopped and stymied from about 2010 to about 2016 when they really kind of got the revenues to fire back up. So let's talk about what is a recession. If you look at the annualized real GDP growth, we were coming off here in first quarter of 21, really strong growth rate in that area. We've seen it drop in 21 right here, quarter 3. That was really the bottom of the COVID smack, but we've really seen it drop in first quarter of 22, struggle to come back to life, high in the quarter 3 of 22, and then dropping back off toward the end of the year. But we've also seen that is not what our growth rate looks here in the Boise market, which that's a pretty good thing. But Idaho is very well positioned to avoid a recession, even if the national economy does, because we have a lot of things going for us. And we're expected to still continue to be among the fastest growing states in the country this decade. And we've got a lot of other things going on that are coming in. So I think as we start to see that in-migration continue, the households continue to expand, we're going to be able to avoid a lot of what is going to happen on a national level to areas like Detroit, San Francisco, New York, and some of the larger markets there that are already struggling before the recession became national news. But here's where we're at, guys, and this is a national level. We were expecting a contraction in the market of 1.8% in July. But we saw an expansion, and we're seeing how we're, as a nation, we're staving off the recession that's been expected. But we are starting to see some lagging indicators here in the first quarter of this year, and how those are starting to affect on a national level. So this is really kind of something where we're looking at the GDP and how things are happening in that regard, so that we can look at what is sticking around and what we can see for continued growth. Idaho is the fastest growing state this decade. It was the second fastest growing last decade. It grew by 2.5% in 2020. Utah was the second fastest at 1.6. And I know we don't get the recognition for how we've grown because our numbers aren't that big. But we're still bringing in 2.3 or 2.5% new population into our state on an annual basis. We've got to find housing for them, employment for them. We've got to find goods and services, places for them to eat, libraries for them to go to, movie theaters for them to go to. And all of those things are just creating that ancillary balloon that is continuing to prove to be an extremely strong market here in Boise, Idaho. We grew by 17% during the 2010s. Like I said, it's a great place to be broke, right? People were able to sell out in California, even in a recession in 2010 and 11, move here, still enjoy a great quality of life, and have funds left over because housing markets tanked everywhere. Let's talk about personal income, because it doesn't matter how many people you get in here. If there's no money to spend, that's definitely going to affect the economy in a very negative direction. But the reality is we have been very strong in the personal income growth. And I think a lot of that has to do with the telecommuting and the jobs that people are able to do that way. But Idaho is the 44th, is ranked number 44 for personal income. Not great, but our cost of living is there. We're also the third fastest growing in 2022 at 7.5%. So we're rapidly catching up. And in another slide, I'll show you just how dramatic that has been in the last 5 to 7 years. And it's really beginning to improve. We're looking at a personal income per capita of 82% of the national average. So we're not far off. And we've improved to 84% by Q4 of 22. So as you see this start to really kind of balloon out, where people are, COVID taught a lot of people that they didn't want to be where they thought they wanted to be. And they started moving for medical reasons, for political reasons, for job reasons, all those kinds of things. And it's really made a lot of that stuff very, very lucrative, because things have continued to come up. But anyway, adjusted gross income per filer. So we're going to assume that you're in a household of five, you got 3 young children. The average gross income, or the adjusted gross income, has gone from $55,000 annually to over $83,000 in just 10 years. And that's pretty substantial, where we've gone from a national rating of 0.82, ranked at 45, to number 26 as far as adjusted income gross growth. And so this is where I see things really starting to change for us, because the net migration that's moving in, they're bringing in a lot of out-of-town jobs, a lot of out-of-town dollars, and things like that. So when you look at the net migration, the main contributing to population and employment growth for Boise, we added 3,686 jobs by natural increase. The natural increase is what I talked about, where people are just becoming of age, joining the workforce. But we added another 30,000 jobs from net migration. Our net migration is 8 times stronger than our natural increase. And so as you continue to bring in additional families, you're going to also increase your natural increase. And so I see a lot of strong growth there. But you can see here in 19, we peaked at about 57,000 people coming in. We've slacked off from that a bit, for sure. Interest rates have slowed the nation substantially, but I think that's probably the biggest contributing factor. And a lot of people weren't moving during COVID. So all Idaho counties have grown since 2020. Only Gooding shrank between 21 and 22. Gooding is a farming community about 2 hours from Boise. The Southwest increase in population from 45% of the nation to 45.56, while the North increased its population share from 13% to 14%. And the 5 counties with the fastest growing by natural increase were in the East. I'll let you guys figure that one out. Farming communities, long, cold winters. Anyway, but Madison County added as many people as Ada by a natural increase, while being 1/9 its size. Again, should have got cable. And then you can start to see that half of Idaho counties experienced more deaths than births between 21 and 22. And that still means that we had a net population growth, even with more people virtually or literally leaving the state permanently to never return during that time period. So changing income composition of in-migration. One of the things that we're seeing here is that when people were moving here, they were coming in, the inflow was in that 35 to 45 and then getting up into the 60s. But since about 2016, this chart has just absolutely taken off. And you're seeing that we're up almost to $95,000 a year as far as what kind of income people are bringing into the state, jobs that they're bringing with them, jobs that companies are creating and bringing people in from out of state, versus those that are leaving they're leaving lower paying jobs, which to me, again, is exciting because the high paying jobs aren't the transient jobs. They're being created, they're staying, and they are continuing to be profitable to the state and to the economies that they represent inside the state. Comparing in-migration to Idahoans and all Americans, the adjusted gross income per filing, you can see the orange line at the top is the national average for the whole U.S. And the yellow is Idaho as far as its total, what its average household income is now. And then again, the gray reflects those that are inbound and versus the brown, which reflects those that are outbound. So without belaboring that point, you guys can see that we're seeing a lot of things change as far as how much people in Idaho are making and where those jobs are coming from and the fact that they're sticking around. Behavior of the wealthiest immigrants, $200,000 share of tax returns. We're seeing we're up around 9% of our population, which is higher than the Idaho inflow is bringing in a higher than national average of $200,000 a year jobs, which to me, again, is very exciting because that's a strong economic driver. We're seeing wealthy people with strong jobs coming into our area, which will only add to our growth and things that are going on here. Net migration for the next 5 years. What are they expecting? Well, they're expecting it to slow down, and that's a good thing. We are seeing that we want that to slow down, and we are experiencing that as some of the other charts showed. But we're not dipping into the negatives. We're not getting below what we've seen historically. And that is encouraging for that. So my conclusion, Idaho's risk of inflation or of recession is low. The national recession is unlikely to have begun in 23 as they predicted, and it might start in the second quarter of 23. But Idaho is very well positioned to avoid the national recession because it has significant growth on a level and per capita basis. If Idaho continues to outperform its peers, it can expect to increase net migration. Now you're going to start to see areas like California, like Washington, start to really hurt economically. People start to lose jobs in Microsoft and Amazon headquarters and all that kind of stuff. And people are going to be looking for another place that provides them good job stability and quality of life. So we could actually see a spike if we go into a very serious recession like we did in 2010 of people inbound just trying to survive and come to a place that is growing. We expect a net migration to the state of around 25 to 30,000 people over the next 5 years, and we expect to cross the 2 million people in the state next year. Like I said, we're not huge, but we're attracting and we're making huge headlines on what we're doing. Growth patterns obviously differ across the state, but the Southeast and the North are the major migration targets. And we are in the Southwest. And so you're seeing a lot go into Idaho Falls area, Pocatello area. The FBI headquarters just announced they're moving 400 IRS or FBI cybersecurity agents into Pocatello. Not a very big town. That's going to have a huge impact. And the East has a faster growing domestic population. So that's what I've got for you guys. I'm going to open it up to some questions. If you've got some, I kind of had to ramble through that. I wanted to cover a lot of information, but show you the depth of where Idaho's at and what it's positioned to do. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. You want to put them either in the chat or you can, I think we have the technology for you to hit the hand raise button and we can unmute you. But I've got one from Mike here. This all looks very promising, and judging by all the commercial and multifamily construction across the valley, it would seem many developers and builders have taken notice and are building extensively to meet and profit from growing anticipated demands. Do you have figures for these two segments that currently compare current and under construction supply with current and projected near-term demand. Unfortunately, Mike, I don't have that. That is an ever-changing thing. As you know, when the Fed started raising interest rates, we wound up with an abundant supply of real estate. What I do know is that we're less than a month's supply of for sale product in the Valley. Currently, both Nampa and Caldwell and or Canyon and Ada County have less than a 1 month supply of housing, real estate, 2 month supply of real estate sitting on the market on the books. And a lot of that, when you break that demographically, is that $750,000 plus market that is been taking a beating on that. But I've also heard that there are upwards of 10,000 units that are either under construction or have been approved through planning on the multifamily front in the last 18 months. Some of those are like a couple of our projects nearing completion. But the thing that I've noticed about those, and this has been a historic trend for the last 15 years, is only about half of those that got approved through planning are actually making it across the finish line to get built. And as we've seen interest rates rise, I've seen the flow of deals come across my desk of ready to be built projects escalate by about tenfold. I probably see 5-6 deals a week now of permit ready projects nationwide that just don't pencil anymore, or are in markets like Dallas or Houston, where you're seeing average median incomes at the $55,000 a year range, and rents struggling to push past that $1,900, $2,000 threshold. So that's what I know for that. But Mike, I will track that data down and get that to you. But if you guys want, Isaac, if you go ahead and throw my Calendly link up in the chat, if you guys want to talk more about what we're specifically doing in this market with what's going on, we would love to chat with you guys about that in one-on-one. But it's if you go to the webinar chat, you can get a link to my Calendly. We could talk about projects that we're actually doing. But you're also going to see us do a deep dive on multiple markets, because I think when we're looking at the recession, we're going to continue to see markets that are going to underperform and people are going to continue to leave. And we're going to see those that are like Boise that are going to stay strong. And we want to be able to highlight those so that we're not, from our point of view, we're not chasing deals in every market just to chase deals. So with that, I'll give another minute. If anybody else has got some questions, raise your hand or throw it in the chat. But also, if you want, you can reach out to Christy to get a copy of this. We'll also post it on our YouTube channel, chop it up for some stats for some of the reels we do. So with no more questions, guys, I want to thank you all for coming, and thank you for your participation. And again, if you've got any questions, grab that chat link, set up an appointment, Calendly appointment with me. Love to chat with you, or get a hold of Christy, and we can tell you more about what we're doing in our great growth area. We'll talk to you guys next time.